Thank you for listening to The Defender, which airs Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern, and 7 p.m. Pacific. Listen to the show only on the Resilient Christian Radio.
And I want to tell the listeners a little bit about just what I know about you. I tell you guys, and I'm talking to all of you out there that's on the broadcast now, this brother, this man of God is a true jewel. A true jewel. And Pastor Tim, ever since I met you, you have always been the same. You have never changed. Every time I see you, you're always cordial, always upbeat. And I can tell you one thing, I always know that if I want to hear the truth, all I got to come and do is ask you, because you're going to stand flat-footed and tell the truth just like it is, man. And I appreciate that about you, man. I really, really do, brother. And I want you to know that.
Bless you, man. If I can say real quick, I really appreciate you, because I can remember even before I started pastoring, when I was going to different churches, filling in, I would always call and get suggestions and advice, and you would always give me good stuff, man. So you have helped me in years gone by, and in a tremendous way in my ministry. So I thank God for you, and, you know, you give me too much credit. I give God the glory, but you are the jewel. So I thank you, man, for being a major part in my life. I thank God for you.
Oh, man, that's awesome, Pastor Tim. Fellowship and brotherhood is so precious these days, and that's something that I've always felt with you, brother. Like I said, there's never been any variance between us, never been any difference in between the way we've approached each other, or just had a real fellowship and kinship, man. And, man, that's priceless today, especially among men and among brothers, man. We need a lot more of that, and so I'm very thankful for that. So without further ado, Pastor Tim, I want the listeners to know a little bit about you, a little bit about where you're from, your upbringing, and for you just to tell people what you want them to know about what God has done in your life. So let me ask you first off, Pastor Tim, where were you born and raised at?
Man, I was born in the magnificent small city of Paris, Tennessee. It's a little small town, man, on the west side of Tennessee.
Okay, Paris, Tennessee. And so tell the listeners a little bit, Pastor Tim, about what your family life was like. You know, I'm familiar with Paris, of course. I lived there for 8 years of my life. But tell the people a little bit about what your family dynamic was in growing up.
Well, man, I had my mother. As a matter of fact, my mother, I'm also her pastor. She's in choir rehearsal right now. Then I had my father, and we had my little brother. My father had a couple of other children, and man, it was a typical small-town city. We didn't have a whole lot, and I used to be ashamed about that, but now I realize that's part of my testimony, typical food stamp family in a lower income place in Paris. The city's not very big, but I think every town has its part say hood. So we was in the I don't want to say the ghetto, but we was in the smaller part of Paris where we didn't have much, but everybody loved each other. So, and everybody loved Jesus. Mama took us to church all the time, but it was a blessing the way I grew up. I saw some things that probably some children shouldn't see, but I'm thankful for my upbringing. Me and my little brother, we're still tight, and I have a couple of sisters. We talk and meet each other once a year on vacation. So that's a little bit about my family background.
Oh, man, that's awesome, man. That's awesome, to be able to have that, and, I can say that for myself. I try to connect with, my father had some children, besides just with my mother. And, my father, he's passed and gone on now, but I can remember him telling me, Pastor Tim, that the one thing that he wanted me to do is that he wanted me to keep contact with my younger brother and sister. Because for me, he wanted me to do that, man. I mean, and when I would try to bring up this half-brother stuff or whatever, he would shoot me down right quick, brother. He said, listen, hey, ain't no half nothing, He said, ain't nobody divide me in half, so it ain't no half anything. He said, that's your brother and that's your sister. So I thank my dad for that, for instilling it in us, man. So that's awesome that you have fellowship with your family, with your brothers and sisters, and you maintain a close relationship. So let me ask you this, Pastor Tim. So growing up in that environment, you're in a small town, and I could only imagine that, it's a close-knit community, and a lot of people know each other and know about each other's whereabouts and, different things that they're doing. So I know that there was a road for you to get to where you are. So tell us a little bit about what happened, the dynamic changes in your life that took you and veered you off of that course of being, homebred, going to church and things like that. And then there was a detour that was made. So tell us a little bit about, what was going on with you at that time.
It was, man. Like I said, I started going to church at a very young age. And back in those days, we went to church just about every day. And we just stayed in church, and I was baptized at the age of 10. But as I said earlier, I saw things, man, that, children just should not see, because my dad, he was a good guy, but he was, I can say, addicted to the street life. So he would take us in and out of cafes and things like that. And it seems like instead of that turning me off, it kind of turned me on. So as I got grown, I kind of strayed away, because when I was a child, Mama's not going to let us get away with too much. She used switches back in those days. Problem. Mama didn't have no problem, just like today. She don't have no problem correcting us. But when I turned 18, I never will forget. First of all, my dad died when I was 17. He died in a tragic way, and at the time, at that age, as a kid, man, it was devastating to me. And it kind of, to be honest with you, made me really give up on God. So when I turned 18, I rebelled against God, and I went out there. I started drinking and smoking and hanging around with that crowd that I should have been turned off to. Now, I want to say that I feel that I had a calling on my life to preach at the age of 15. But after my dad died, and I got 18 and I could do legally what I wanted to do, I done everything, my brother, that I was big and bad enough to do. I mean, I ran the streets heavy. I quit going to church, pretty much disappointed my family to the point that really nobody wanted to be bothered with me anymore. And this went on for several years. When I look back at that now, I realize that the reason why I was going through and beating myself up so much is because I was disobeying God. And the real change came when I was sitting in a drug rehab. I had got addicted to drugs to the point to where my life was just destroyed. Thoughts of suicide, depression, all of that stuff that comes with the sinful lifestyle, all of that stuff that the devil puts on you when I began to live this crazy lifestyle. But I ended up going to rehab, and it was there when I believe the Lord really spoke to me and told me it's now or never. Either you're going to straighten up and do what I called you to do, or you're going to die out here in these streets. And it was then, that was around 2006, I began to read the Bible again. I began to, just give myself to Lord. I would prostrate myself on the ground and scream out to the Lord, letting him know that I acknowledge him. He is God. I would just prostrate myself and give my full self. And, brother, don't you know, after I really started seeking him, from 2006 on up to now, the Lord has done great things in my life. Completely took me off of drugs. And let me say this, I thought that there was going to be a time when I was at least going to drink or smoke a cigarette. My brother, the Lord has took me off of all of that. Man, I don't even smoke a cigarette. I don't even drink. And that's nobody but the Lord, because when I say I was deep in the streets, I was deep in the streets. From here to Chicago to Nashville, I have been in some of the toughest streets in that drug scene, and it was nobody but the Lord. And now I know why he didn't let me die out there, because he had a major calling on my life. And I tell our members all the time, sometimes you have to go through something to realize how good God is, because when I say that I had lost everything, I had lost everything. And my girlfriend at the time, she's my wife now, was ready to leave me. And we had already had 2 kids, and I had 3 other children, and being what I was called to be. But the Lord restored all that. Man, I'm a decent father. I'm not the best father, but I'm there. Pastor in a church now, holding down a job. I wear so many coats and jackets, but the Lord has completely turned my life around.
Wow, wow, Pastor. So that's phenomenal for you to say those things. So then this should let our listeners know that you are never too young to hear the voice of God. Because, Pastor Tim, you said you was 15 years old and you knew without a shadow of doubt that God wanted to consecrate you unto his kingdom service. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I knew it without a shadow of a doubt when I was 15 years old that I was supposed to be preaching the gospel, but I refused to do it. I wanted to do my own thing. And the Lord showed me that you can't do your own thing. You have to do what I say do. Wow.
So then at 15 years old, I mean, you're still a young man. You're just maturing at that time. I mean, you know, every other 15-year-old. I can remember when I was 15, I was crazy backwards. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it took me a long time to mature. So you having such a strong unction to go forward in God and to preach the gospel, but then you said you had to go through some things to really recognize who God was. So you're saying you had to get to the bottom, and then your deliverance was instantaneous. Because some of us don't get delivered right offhand, Pastor Tim. I know for me, it took several different things for me to be progressively to go through this salvation and go through this deliverance, you know. But you said God did this miraculously for you all in one setting. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. When I finally had made up my mind, and I knew, and I thank God for Mama taking us to church, because when I called on him and I prostrated myself and told the Lord, Lord, I know I'm not supposed to live like this. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do. Slowly but surely, it was a process. I seen the Lord working, turning my life around, and I haven't turned back since, my brother. I have not turned back since, and I'm thankful for that.
Wow. Man, that almost sounds like a Jonah situation, Pastor Tim. That is phenomenal, man. That's incredible, Pastor. I mean, because people need to know that there is hope, man. And so there you are at 15 years old. You know you've been groomed in church, so you've had a deposit put in you. You said you was baptized in the Holy Spirit even early on, and so that rebellion or that progression for you going to the streets, it was just a pull. But would you say that it came from that point of pain that you felt in losing your father and the things that you saw that was heavy on you, that made you kind of go that route to kind of see if you could make it on your own?
Absolutely, because I remember wanting my dad to straighten up so bad. Just like I was an alcoholic and a drug addict, that's the things that he had got involved in. And I can remember as a child, high school, and, you know, kids can be so cruel. Kids can be so cruel, and people, you know, talking about my dad because it's a small town, so kids would say what their parents had said. And I remember wanting my dad to straighten up so bad, and when he died, I just felt like the Lord had let me down. First of all, God didn't let my dad straighten up to be productive like some other kids' dad that I had seen. But not only did he not do that for me, God, and this is the mind of a teenager thinking, not only did God not straighten my dad up, but then God took him from me.
Right.
So that right there, and I've learned that most people who are atheists have an experience like that, to where God, they don't understand, like I didn't understand how just because God doesn't heal my mama or heal my daddy, that doesn't mean God's not a healer. He just in this situation did. So that just ruined me, and it made me rebel against the church and God. But I thank God that he is one that can come. He works in mysterious ways, as the old folks said. He revealed himself to me when I was at my low point and let me know that he is a real God and blessed my life, man. And that's why I can't turn around. I police myself because I know God is real and he works in the affairs of human beings. So I'm thankful for him turning my life around.
Wow, that's very profound for you to say that, Pastor Tim, because I've met people who have a disdain for God.
Check us out at Facebook at RCR Network, and also on Twitter at RCR_network, and our website at rcrnetwork.com.